Not even Toronto's new mayor, Olivia Chow, can get the feds to pony up. And what am I referring to? Well, I'm talking about the federal government's responsibility when it comes to refugees that have landed in the city of Toronto. Hello, I'm Adrienne Batra. With me is Brian Lilley. This has been it was a significant issue during Toronto's most recent mayor's race, Brian, where each candidate, didn't matter if it's left, right, or center, said we're going to get the feds to pay up because our shelter spaces are being taken up by refugees. Therefore, we have residents of Toronto living in parks and they need homes and they need shelter. We have a big mess on our hands, to the point where they were coming into the Pearson airport and declaring refugee status and ended up on Peter Street. It's a mess. It's chaotic. What's happened?
Well, Olivia Chow asked for more money, and the federal government, well, they offered a partial payment, but on the larger scale issue, this week, Chrystia Freeland, the finance minister, still the finance minister after the cabinet shuffle, told Toronto residents they can go fend for themselves. It was interesting, to say the least. 25 seats in Toronto, 24 of them held by Liberals. The city is in dire straits. A lot of it, as you mentioned, is driven by the issue of refugees, asylum seekers. That's a federal responsibility. And they currently are taking up, and have been for some time, between 30 and 40% of all shelter spaces in the city of Toronto. For people that don't know, our shelter spaces in the city increased from 6,000 to about 9,000 over the last several years. So that means we've got 3,000 people or more per night staying in city-funded shelters who are, by law, by the Constitution, federal responsibility. So, John Tory, before he resigned, had been asking the federal government to pay up. His interim replacement, Jennifer McKelvey, had been asking the city to pay up. Every single major candidate, as you said, asked for the feds to pay up. They came forward with $97 million. Olivia Chow, just on the refugee file alone, had asked for $157 million. And they made a big show of saying Toronto's going to get $97 million. Well, when you're past due on a bill, I'm not saying you've ever been past due on a bill, Adrienne. I surely have never been. But you get that, here's what you owe now. Here's your past due. Here's your really past due amount. That's what they paid. They paid the really past due amount. They're still in arrears, and they're still not paying for what is currently happening.
Yeah.
And they're trying to take a victory lap.
And Freeland playing, as Liberals do, they play politics with all of it. The finance minister, Chrystia Freeland, comes out and says to the mayor of Toronto, the province of Ontario is basically awash with cash. They can come to your rescue. And I find that whole argument a bit disingenuous, because we all know there's only one taxpayer. And this is not to let the city of Toronto off the hook with these spendthrift councillors who for far too long have been spending money with very little accountability. But we're drilling down into the one specific area when it comes to the federal responsibility on the refugees. Justin Trudeau has basically flung the borders open and said, come to Canada. And we are a welcoming country, and we are a compassionate country. And many people that are coming do face very serious persecution and issues in their home country. We understand that. But how are we a compassionate country and society when they come here and they end up in the middle of downtown Toronto with no means, no information, no shelter, no guidance, no nothing? It only was up until independent MP Kevin Vuong, who really took ownership of this issue, where things started moving.
And kudos to Kevin Vuong for that. And he is the child of refugees himself. His parents came over as boat people, as we called the people that came from Vietnam in the 1970s. And he and his team went down and cleared Peter Street. I had been there before. I was there last week on walking home after a Blue Jays game, and still dozens and dozens of people living out on the sidewalk. Why? Because they arrived in Canada, they claimed asylum, and a federal worker said, we don't have anywhere for you to go. You should go to this address. There's a bus outside that'll take you there. Look, I think that the city of Toronto, their budget has increased dramatically. And you know that in my coverage over the next weeks and months, I'll be pointing out where the budget can be cut. It went up dramatically under John Tory, and I don't think we're getting the services for that. But on this specific issue, this is a federal responsibility. So they owe $60 million in back payment for what the city has already provided. They also owe for what's going forward. So they're owed tens of millions of dollars. Also in the last election, Justin Trudeau campaigned saying, we will make Toronto whole for the effects of COVID, like the fact that transit, the TTC and the subway system has never recovered. I think we're still at about 70% of ridership. Well, that puts a big hole in the transit system. He promised and campaigned in the last election to provide for that. So this is not for everyday ongoing funding. These are specific asks, and the province stepped up to do it. So it's funny to hear Chrystia Freeland make a couple of claims. One, she tries to say constitutionally this is the province's responsibility. The federal Liberals don't care about the Constitution. They campaigned and brought in on a national childcare program. That's provincial jurisdiction. A national pharmacare program is one of their provinces. That's provincial. A national dental care, that's provincial. They get involved in school policy, like in New Brunswick. They get involved in healthcare, like in every province. That's provincial. So there's that. Then they say, due to our fiscal conditions, the province of Ontario is awash in cash. Do you know why? Inflation. The province has more HST revenue, provincial sales tax revenue, because inflation's through the roof. So they're getting more every time you fill up your gas tank, every time you buy a new fridge or piece of furniture or clothing or what have you. They're getting more money because the price of all those things has gone up. That's not something she should be bragging about. But as we saw when she bragged about how great she was on inflation, Chrystia Freeland, despite spending years working for Reuters, despite being finance minister for years, is still pretty much economically, fiscally illiterate.
Well, and people should remember that the next time the Liberals claim to be the compassionate ones. Log on to Facebook and Twitter. Let us know what you think. Go to thetorontosun.com. Hit that subscribe button. You're going to find coverage on stories like this and others you will not find anywhere else.